The introduction. As dusk settled over the small town of Maple Creek, an unsettling stillness consumed the streets. The flickering street lamps cast long shadows that danced ominously upon the cracked pavement, while the chill of late autumn seeped into the bones of the old buildings lining Maple Avenue. The picturesque town, known for its vibrant fall foliage and charming cottages, now wore a shroud of unease. Residents, lulled into complacency by years of tranquility, sensed an inexplicable shift in the air, a foreboding whisper that something hidden lurked just below the surface. On the outskirts of town sat the Sequoia Motel, a once bustling establishment now faded and worn. The vacancy sign buzzed intermittently, its garish neon light struggling against the encroaching darkness. Despite its diminishing reputation, the motel attracted transient visitors seeking refuge or anonymity. That fateful autumn night, it would play host to the events that would unravel the facade of this quiet town. At approximately 10:00 p.m., the thin walls of room 12 echoed with the sound of laughter, muffled by the haze of cigarette smoke. A lone figure, obscured in shadows, leaned against the window, peering out at the empty parking lot below. In that moment, while Maple Creek readied itself for slumber, a sinister transformation was about to unfold, a mystery that would grip the community and challenge everything they believed about safety and security in their once innocuous town. The victim. The following morning, the tranquility of Maple Creek was shattered by an unsettling discovery. A local jogger, a resident named Helen Foster, took her regular route past the Sequoia Motel, her breath rising in white puffs against the brisk morning chill. As she rounded the corner, the glimmer of something unnatural caught her eye. Glinting against the weak sunlight, she stumbled upon a scene that would forever haunt her. A lifeless body sprawled at the edge of the motel's parking lot. It was Lisa Montgomery, a 29-year-old who had moved to Maple Creek only a year prior. Known for her infectious smile and warm heart, Lisa was a waitress at the town diner, where she had quickly become a beloved fixture. According to neighbors, she had recently talked about feeling invigorated by the sense of small-town safety and community, an aspect that now seemed cruelly ironic. After numerous years of instability and transient living, Lisa finally seemed to be establishing roots. Draped in a faded denim jacket, her body was eerily still, and the early morning light highlighted the shock on her serene face. The town's peace was shattered as the reality of her death washed over the community. A daughter, a friend, now an unsettling statistic. Police and forensic teams arrived promptly, and the atmosphere thickened with tension and confusion. The muffled voices of officers contrasted sharply with the growing hum of neighbors gathering to witness the tragic news unfold. Maple Creek had found its first real villain, an indiscriminate act that shattered the perceived safety net woven by familiarity and trust. The crime scene. As the sun fully breached the horizon, casting a pale wash over the scene, forensic investigators began to meticulously document every detail surrounding Lisa Montgomery's body. Officers cordoned off the area with crimson tape bearing the stark inscription, "Police line, do not cross." The sun's light flickered through it, illuminating the unease that gripped the early morning. Ruthlessly efficient, the team collected evidence, their faces steeled with grim determination. The crime scene offered little clarity. No obvious signs of struggle marred the area, and with the absence of a weapon, questions spiraled with each passing minute. Lisa lay positioned near the edge of the motel, almost as if she had collapsed from exhaustion. An upholstered chair discarded nearby hinted that she might have been enjoying a brief moment of solitude. The fleeting remnants of a cigarette smoldered at her side and fluttered a few feet away, the embers glowing defiantly in the crisp air. Detective Robert Langley arrived, scanned the scene with a practiced eye, and quickly understood that this was not merely a case of a random act of violence. He noted the absence of chaos. The eerie calm, the silence screamed that something sinister had transpired. As he crouched to examine her personal effects, he unearthed a small leather wallet, photographs of friends tucked within, and a key card to room 12 found on her person. A thread of connection had been woven between the victim and the motel, a place now tainted with suspicion. The initial wave of shock within the tight-knit community began to spiral into fear and paranoia as residents pondered the loss of what had once been unthinkable. In the heart of Maple Creek, darkness had seeped in, leaving a palpable chill where warmth had thrived. The early investigation. With the immediate chaos of the crime scene under control, Detective Langley and his team began the task of collecting witness statements. Faces were grave among the townsfolk, as whispers of fear rippled through the community. Sure-footed and stern, Langley focused on gathering information that might illuminate the darkness surrounding Lisa's death. Local residents described Lisa with a mix of fondness and disbelief. Her outgoing nature made her popular at the diner, but rumors hinted at shadows in her past. Some spoke of a troubled relationship with a former boyfriend who had never fully exited her life. Others mentioned her late-night encounters at the Sequoia, where she had seemingly formed a close bond with the transient visitors. The perspective shifted with each interview, casting fragmented images that only deepened the mystery. During an impromptu press conference outside the diner, tension hung in the air as Langley urged the community to remain vigilant. "We are following all leads, and I assure you, we will find justice for Lisa," he promised, his voice steady yet tinged with an undercurrent of urgency. As the media snapped pictures and journalists jotted down notes, uneasiness grew like a storm cloud. Inside the motel, Langley conducted interviews with the staff and guests who had been present on the night before Lisa's death. Each person offered a window into Lisa's final hours, yet none had been privy to the truth. One motel guest, a middle-aged man with a wary gaze, spoke haltingly about hearing muffled voices from room 12 late at night, distinctive sound of laughter mixed with an uneasy tension. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. And with every bit of information, the tangled web surrounding Lisa Montgomery's life began to take shape. The town could not remain silent. As darkness loomed, the possibility of a predator hidden among them felt all too real. The dead ends. As days turned into weeks, the initial fervor surrounding Lisa Montgomery's death began to wane, leaving behind a trail of frustration for Detective Langley and his team. Despite their relentless pursuit of leads, few solid connections materialized. The quaint town of Maple Creek, once a bastion of camaraderie, now bore a heavy veil of suspicion and unanswered questions. The investigation had turned into a labyrinth of dead ends. Langley pored over surveillance footage from the motel, his eyes weary as faces flickered across the screens like fleeting phantoms. Only a handful seemed to resonate. A scruffy man in a baseball cap who had been loitering outside the Sequoia, a pair of giggling girls who had checked in briefly, and a local handyman who had casually wandered through the camera's gaze on the night of Lisa's demise. although there were many unanswered questions. What had she been doing outside that night? And who could account for her movements? None of these individuals substantiated any solid evidence. Repeated canvasses of the neighborhood yielded scant cooperation. Whispers blended into silence, fear dampening memories. A local bar, frequented by Lisa before her death, revealed little more than murmurs about her fleeting relationships and the speculation of an overblown imagination. Even the former boyfriend, initially shaped as a person of interest, proved elusive as alibi confirmed by others, leaving Langley with nothing but the bitter taste of disappointment. Every new conversation seemed to lead right back to where they began, like a roundabout that never exited. It became increasingly apparent that the town was grappling with the reality that someone among them might harbor malicious intent, leading them into a web of paranoia and mistrust. With the weight of their community's sorrow heavy upon their shoulders, Langley and his team pressed on, determined to unearth the truths hidden beneath layers of uncertainty. Yet, as they sifted through the noise, the gaping void of Lisa's absence echoed louder than ever, drowning out all hope of a resolution. A break in the case. Just as the investigation began to feel like an endless cycle of frustration, a flicker of hope arrived in the form of an anonymous tip. Late one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a red hue across the sky, Langley received an email detailing an unusual occurrence outside the Sequoia Motel the night of Lisa's death. The sender, a name withheld, claimed to have witnessed something peculiar: a dark figure standing near the rear of the motel, pacing restlessly before disappearing into the night. Eagerly, Langley ordered a re-examination of all evidence collected from the motel, focusing particularly on the reports of nearby witnesses. A fresh surge of motivation coursed through the team. Buoyed by the prospect that there might still be hope, they dove back into the surveillance footage, combing through the frames with renewed vigor. Each moment scrutinized, each shadow dissected, as they sought that elusive dark figure. Days later, upon reviewing the CCTV from the back lot of the motel, an out-of-frame image flickered into view, a shape that confirmed the tipster's claims. While a tall silhouette was seen lingering near the dumpsters, barely illuminated by the dim light of a single bulb. After careful analysis, they established a loose timeline of movement leading to and from the area, raising an urgent need to identify the figure in the footage. Langley sent a team door-to-door, armed with a series of photographs taken from the recordings, while diligent members of the force began reviewing the motel's guest list for that night. A name emerged: Nick Porter, a transient who had checked in under a false identity and had since vanished without a trace. With fresh eyes on the case, Langley felt the weight of anticipation. Hope flickered anew as the pieces of the puzzle started aligning. Grasping the lifeline, they planned to track down Porter, inching closer to cracking the case and uncovering the truth that had haunted Maple Creek for too long. The suspect. The search for Nick Porter intensified as Langley dispatched a team of officers to follow every lead. Distinctly aware of the ticking clock, they utilized a network of information that connected various law enforcement agencies, seeking any recent sightings of the transient. The atmosphere felt charged with urgency, a sense that they were on the cusp of unraveling a mystery that had gripped Maple Creek. 3 days later, a breakthrough occurred when a call came in from a small-town diner 30 miles away. A waitress had recognized Porter from the photographs shared across social media. She noted his peculiar demeanor, his unsettling habit of glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to follow him. He paid with cash, and while his story about having lost his way fell flat, the waitress's gut instinct told her something wasn't right. Langley and his team wasted no time in driving to the diner, arriving as the early morning sun began to drape the landscape in golden hues. The waitress, visibly anxious but resolute, recounted her interactions with Porter while detectives scrutinized the surroundings. She described him as someone whose eyes didn't match the infectious charm he tried to exude. They trailed his movements, piecing together his recent whereabouts. A local security guard recalled seeing a man matching his description dart down an alley just a few blocks from the diner hours earlier. The urgency escalated. The detectives split up, canvassing the area, each heartbeat echoing hopes of colliding with the elusive suspect. Later that afternoon, they cornered Porter in a rundown motel, eyes wide with trepidation as he fumbled with excuses. But it soon became clear he wasn't prepared to face the weight of his actions. The trembling hands failed to mask the demeanor of someone utterly out of control. Langley questioned him about his connection to Lisa Montgomery, while ligaments of guilt tightened around the edges of Porter's guarded responses. With each lie unraveled, a sense of clarity encroached like a dark fog. As the weight of evidence began to mount against him, it was evident that the truth could no longer remain buried. The fragile peace of Maple Creek hung precariously as the town braced itself for revelations regarding the person responsible for shattering their tranquility. The trial. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as the trial for Nick Porter commenced. Maple Creek, a town once marked by camaraderie and security, now felt the weight of its collective grief manifest as the community gathered to seek justice for Lisa Montgomery. Rows of solemn faces lined the benches, each person hoping to glean understanding from the proceedings unfolding before them. Detective Langley took the stand first, recounting the investigation and the evidence that led to Porter's arrest. The evidence was compelling: surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and the forensic links that tied him to the scene. Porter's defense team, however, aimed to sow doubt, framing him as a victim of circumstance. They painted his transient lifestyle as one dominated by misunderstanding and hardship, a narrative that attempted to elicit sympathy from the jury. As the prosecution meticulously laid out the time frames and circumstances leading to Lisa's death, graphic details emerged, a chilling recount of her last moments, as well as the snippets of audio that captured her laughter and subsequent silence. The room felt heavy, the air thick with sorrow as Lisa's family listened, their faces etched with grief. Days passed into a rhythm of testimonies. Friends and associates of Porter, some past acquaintances from shelters, were called to the witness stand. They spoke of his unpredictable nature, intelligent, yes, but also prone to bouts of aggression fueled by substance abuse. Each narrative added layers to the portrait of a man wrestling with inner demons, yet unable to escape the choices he made. When it was time for closing arguments, the prosecution urged the jury to consider the evidence presented and the life they had lost, an innocent life taken too soon. The defense, on the other hand, implored them to consider humanity, whether Porter deserved another chance, despite the undeniable darkness that enveloped him. As the jury deliberated, the weight of their decision hung in the balance. Maple Creek collectively held its breath, knowing that today would either bring closure or plunge them further into the shadows of despair. The trial had become a reflection of the town itself, a reckoning of fears, courage, and the pursuit of justice that would echo long after the verdict was delivered. The aftermath. The verdict arrived with a hushed intensity, the weight of anticipation palpable as the jury foreman stood and cleared his throat. As the word guilty resonated throughout the courtroom, an exhale swept through the packed audience, mingling relief with lingering sorrow. Nick Porter was sentenced to life in prison, a stark reality settling like a heavy fog over Maple Creek. Though justice had been served, the ache of loss remained a permanent scar on the community. In the days following the trial, the town grappled with the emotional remnants of the ordeal. The diner where Lisa once served coffee became a makeshift memorial, adorned with flowers and photographs. Diners left heartfelt notes, each encapsulating a memory that celebrated her vibrancy. A stark contrast to the grim circumstances of her departure. Helen Foster, the jogger who found Lisa, often visited. She sought solace in the connection forged between her daily runs and the presence of a life so tragically cut short. Detective Langley spent quiet evenings in a dimly lit office, sorting through case files, meticulously documenting everything that had transpired. Each case still lingered in his mind, but the weight of Lisa's case pressed heavier upon him. The sense of responsibility for our communities, safety, intertwined with the lingering aftershock of events that had irrevocably altered the lives of so many. As weeks turned into months, Maple Creek began to rediscover its rhythm, but the sense of safety had been irrevocably altered. Local gatherings were vibrant, yet the absence of Lisa hung like an unspoken truth among laughter echoing in the corners of cafes and along the playground where children played. The town sought healing through community events, honoring Lisa's memory with annual gatherings that celebrated life and connection moments dedicated to bravery, resilience, and the fragility of existence. While the gavel's final thud had signaled an end to the trial, it spurred the beginning of a collective journey toward recovery, where the shadows of the past began to slowly recede, replaced by the flickering hope of brighter tomorrow. Reflection. As the seasons turned, Maple Creek began to emerge from the shadow of tragedy, yet memories of Lisa Montgomery loomed large in the hearts of its residents. The air was thick with reflection conversations in cafes, now lingered on the kindness she had shown. Stories shared about her laughter echoing through the diner. Lisa had become more than just a name. She was a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of community. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Langley found himself standing by the lake that bordered the town. The water shimmered like glass, mirroring the bright colors of the trees, but beneath its surface resided the darkness of what had transpired. As he watched the ripples delicately distort the reflections of trees above, he pondered the shifting nature of safety and trust, contemplating a familiar truthful doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it blends seamlessly into the fabric of our everyday life. The detective understood that while justice had been served, the scars of loss would take time to heal. Maple Creek had changed irrevocably, not just because of Lisa's death, but through the threads of connection that held the community together in adversity. Striving for healing, the town as a whole redoubled its commitment to watching over one another, driven by the acknowledgement that every individual life had the power to influence countless others. In the end, Lisa's legacy became a call to vigilance and love, a reminder that through darkness, hope can still shine, urging everyone to treasure life's fleeting moments and the connections that enrich them.